Hello, welcome to Valentin Consulting's guest speaker series. I am Dr. Daisy Valentin of Valentin Consulting, and I am so thrilled to invite you to this amazing YouTube channel that we have created. It's been 1 year. This past week, we've been 1 year in existence with this YouTube channel, and we are so happy to have wonderful speakers, especially one today. We are so excited to have, and it's just about dedicating and providing information that comes from entrepreneurs, professionals, leaders in our community, local, globally, and nationwide. So we are so honored to have someone today, Juventino Mesa. Congratulations to you. We are so grateful that you are here because before you came on, you weren't an attorney yet, but congratulations to you because now you are. Now I can say Esquire. So Juventino Mesa, thank you. Welcome. And tell us a little bit about you, how you got here. Just give us a little spiel.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me, Doctor. So my name is Juventino Mesa. I just got sworn in as an attorney last week on Friday, which was a pretty incredible experience. But that swearing in was years in the making. I moved to the U.S. as an undocumented teenager when I was 15 to Minnesota to reunite with my family. Went to high school here in the U.S. Really struggled to figure out life, I guess. And part of it was because I was an undocumented student at the time, and there wasn't a lot of information about us accessing college. And so I got involved in organizing undocumented students. I ended up going to Augsburg University, and the Minnesota Dream Act became law years later, not on time for me to benefit, but I think that's the point, right? Like so many of us stay engaged in things that matter and make a difference for other people and not so much for the personal benefit. And then later on, obviously, I went to law school and I graduated in 2023. And then I passed the bar just recently on April 18. And then my swearing-in ceremony was on Friday. And, I just want to say that it was really, really exciting to be at the Supreme Court and getting sworn in. But it was also really strange because, at the time, when I went to law school and passed the bar, I have had DACA since 2012. And so, I was really excited to continue to be an outspoken DACA holder, undocumented person who was able to go to law school and become an attorney. But then the day before my swearing in, I got my green card, and so so I don't get to
You just
say
got all benefits, right? Yeah, but you still have the process, though. You still have that process of going through all that, right? Because even though you got your green card and things like that, it was a process, right? There was a process there to get to where you are.
Yeah, no, 100%. I still want to share the story of being undocumented and being able to achieve this dream of going to law school and becoming an attorney, because I think we need more positive stories of immigrants, and mine is one of them, and that's why I share it. And so, yeah, it still matters that I did all of this work, before becoming a permanent resident.
Exactly.
But it was just really funny in a way that of course, I got my green card the day before my swearing in, and I'm still processing it. But I'm really excited.
It all fell in place for you, though. I really like that because it all fell in place, and we really want people to see that, right? That it is possible, right? So although, you did this, you did that, but little did you know you were going to have that green card at the same time, right? But it was a process that you went through. And I really like the fact that you mentioned that some of the struggles that you had prior to some of these acts already been in place. Now, I know I met you through la former Senadora Patricia Torres Rey. That's how I met you. And we've been working behind the scenes from that, which I was like, oh, I can't wait till Juventino's attorney, because she kept saying that you were doing that, right? So we know that there's been a lot of changes in what you were discussing and things like that. The recent changes in immigration law, how to access resources. And now that you are the attorney, okay, now we want to talk a little bit, and I want you to give me just like a little bit of everything, because there's so many significant changes, and I know we only have a specific amount of time, but I want you to just think about the main ones that you really want people to really hone in on. I know all of them are important. And we will be putting Juventino's website later on here if you guys want to reach out to him after the fact. But I know there's been some major changes, significant changes, especially with our challenges that are happening right now in our country, and individuals that are navigating the immigration process and how they need to be staying informed and what updates they need, because it still affects their lives. Even though we, like myself, I am a citizen, but even citizens are getting affected, because we have families that have green card or families that are not documented, right? So what are some of those key things? I know we have a lot and we only have limited time. So what are some of the key things that I think you mentioned? One of the main ones for me is education. I think that's the main one.
Yeah. And, I think I'm glad that you started there, because I think there is a lot of fear mongering going on, and it's impacts people. The access people want to have to programs, and I want to make sure people understand what's going on to make informed decisions. I'm not someone who enjoys the hype of all of this drama going on. I think one big thing is lots of noise, lots of fear. We are paying more attention when there is arrests to people in our community, and all of that is real. And so and so I want us to take a little bit of moment and to pause and think about the things that are happening or not happening. And so on education, for example, not a lot has changed. There is fear that the Trump administration wants to use data from undocumented parents whose children who qualify for FAFSA apply for FAFSA. I think that's a potential thing that could happen, but it has not happened. There is no agreement between the administration that manages FAFSA and the data that is being used. And so right now, today, on May 12th, this is not real, right? And so what should people do about FAFSA, and who might be impacted by this? It's only children who qualify for FAFSA and their parents are undocumented. No one else is impacted by any of these. If you are a qualifying student and your parents, I don't know, have asylum or a permanent resident, are you a citizen? You are not impacted by this, will not be impacted by this, and you should apply for FAFSA and get the resources that you qualify and you deserve. For those few families who the parent might be undocumented, we do want you to talk to the Office of Higher Education
Mm-hmm.
or the Office of Financial Aid at your kid's school. Obviously, this is only college related,
Yeah,
nothing about
college, university.
high
Yeah,
school.
not lower
Yeah,
level. Yeah.
yeah,
But
and
this is
so
good. This is good because I was just thinking about the changes in eligibility for in-state tuition and scholarships and financial aid, because a lot of parents think, like you mentioned, it's only for undocumented parents, not the
mhm.
child per se, right?
Yeah, and so that's only FAFSA that I mentioned, right?
Okay.
Everything else continues to be the same. So again, lots of noise going on, but today still undocumented youth by law must be allowed to be in public schools. So that
Mm-hmm.
has not changed. That has been the law since the 80s, and that has not changed. So our kids, regardless of immigration status, are entitled by the Constitution of the United States to access public schools, period. The
Now,
other thing,
now I got a question for you. Sorry to cut you off there.
no, you're fine.
Because they are allowed, but parents are scared to send their kids to school because they feel that they're going to get arrested or taken away or things like that. How can we as citizens, as community, help these parents understand what they need to do? Like what is I know you may not be able to speak on anything, but I know there's things that they need to do or somebody to contact, or like you mentioned, the resources that they might be, where they can say, okay, I don't want to take this away from my kids, because being in school is important. Parents need their kids in school to work. You know, if you don't have
Hmm.
them in school, you
Hmm.
can't work.
Yeah.
But how can we like just give them like an ease in saying, I mean, there's no ease in it because they're going to go into schools whether we like it or not, but how can we help them?
Yeah, so if that's okay with you, I have a little bit that I always share,
Mm-hmm.
and I like to just finish the question about
Okay,
education. So
no problem.
another thing that has not changed is that undocumented students in Minnesota continue to be eligible for financial aid
Okay.
through the Minnesota Dream Act. We passed this in 2013,
Mm-hmm.
and that has not changed. So undocumented students still qualify for in-state tuition, financial aid. Obviously, this is income based, but that hasn't changed. We also got to remember that a lot of financial aid is private.
Mm-hmm.
So think about the Latino Scholarship Fund, the Page Foundation, the Wellen Foundation, and lots of other scholarships. Those are private, have nothing to do with the government, and the requirements have not changed. When I was in high school, so this is a long 20 years ago, those scholarships, private scholarships, actually had requirements for citizenship or a social security number.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked really hard to make sure that these private scholarships changed their requirements so that undocumented students like myself were able to access them. So 2025, that is still the case, that the foundations continue to accept applications from undocumented students regardless of immigration status. And so um, that has not changed. And so people should continue again to apply to scholarships that they're eligible for. And you can go to private schools, Minnesota private schools. They also have scholarships, and that has nothing to do with government
Mm-hmm.
funding. But
Because it,
regardless, the Minnesota Dream Act is still in place, and undocumented students are not impacted by any changes because no changes have been made.
that's good to know, because that way students can say, hey, this is still in place. This doesn't apply to you if you have this and this and that. And if they're going to not a government institution, right? If they're going to a institution that's not a government institution, then they will be able to have some kind of sponsorships or grants or something like that that fall into the private sector versus the government sector. because what's being affected is more the government side. What the government is trying to tell us that, oh, we've spent too much money on you, we don't want to give you that money no more. But it's
Despite
affecting a
us
lot of people.
paying so much
Exactly.
into the system and never getting a benefit.
Exactly. And then taking away some of those funds, not only from a higher education, but also taking those funds away from our younger generation, like our elementary to high school students, right? From the kindergarten to high school, right? There's, we don't know if it's been in place or not, but we've been hearing things. So it's really kind of like, okay, what happens? Now they're taking away some of this funding. What happens to our ELLs teachers, right? What happens to our paraprofessionals that are ELL related? Things like that. Like what happens to that for next year? Because our students need it. You know what I mean? So those are some of those things that I think that it's really important for people to, like you mentioned before, educate themselves, right? People need to learn how to educate themselves. One of the key factor here is empowering themselves to know their rights and knowing what laws apply to them, right? To know, understand the protections under those laws, right? I think that's really important. And I think that's where some of our community, they've never thought about it before until now with all this situation. And I think it's really important for them to kind of like turn back time and say, hey, we need to start educating, just start watching the news, start really seeing what is coming up. Because a lot of people are like, oh, I don't like to watch the news, I don't like to do this. But you know what? You need to be learning. You need to know how you're going to protect yourself, how to protect your kids, especially, right? Your undocumented kids, if they are, and how that affects them. If you haven't done the things that you're supposed to, we'll get them in place. Don't wait till the last minute, right?
Yeah, and I think kind of to answer your question earlier and all that you're saying, to me is the most important, because I always have found that knowledge is power, especially regarding interactions with law enforcement. We can do a bunch of things to protect ourselves and each other. And so if it's okay with you, I have like 4 things that I always tell people to do to protect themselves. And so, one easy thing that everyone can do is that you can attend Know Your Rights workshops. Lots of organizations are providing them. Oftentimes they're in person, but you can also watch them online. And these workshops give people really clear guidance about how to address these immigration concerns that a lot of people have. The second thing, obviously, is carrying appropriate documentation. And so what do I mean by that? Obviously, if you have a green card or a work permit, you are required to carry proof of immigration status. But for people who don't have legal immigration status, this is the nice thing, I guess, of being in Minnesota, is that we all have access to driver's licenses or a state issued identification. And I know that some people have concerns about privacy with federal and state government. I'm not too worried about it because we have really strong laws in Minnesota around privacy when it comes to driver's licenses and state issued IDs. And we have a really strong attorney general that is just fighting hard for us. And so I believe that our laws are good and it's going to protect everyone's privacy. But you should be carrying some sort of identification with your name. And you should never carry false documents. It is common that people, when you get a job, you present a fake green card, a fake social security number. Do not carry those with you if you're driving or anything like that. The third thing that I always tell people is that regardless of immigration status, we all have constitutional rights. We have the right to remain silent. We have the right to speak with an attorney. And, that obviously goes with the caveat of, like, you should know your immigration stance in the sense of
Exactly.
you should understand what your
Your rights
immigration
are.
case is, because when you're in front of an agent, you're the only one who gets to exercise these constitutional rights, no one else. And that's what's really hard sometimes, I think, for people who end up getting in trouble. The fourth thing, and I promise you I'm done with this answer, the fourth thing is that, this is a time to build community. It's really scary. There is lots of fear. There's a lot of misinformation too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a really good time to build community. If you're a part of a church, if you're part of a school, whatever you're a part of, you should connect with other people so that you're not doing this alone. And part of this means that you should be thinking about an emergency plan, right? Like you asked
Mm-hmm.
me earlier, what should parents do? You should think about an emergency plan. Like if you have young children, you should have a power of attorney. You should have someone who is able to care for your kids if you're detained. And all of this is really scary, but it's better to be prepared than being in the worst case scenario and have no plan. Your kids could end up in foster care and a whole hot mess. And we can avoid all of that if we,
Build
again,
community.
sit down, breathe, take a second
Yes.
to think through and build this community and build your connections and build an emergency plan that fits your family.
And I think that's really important because there is a lot of people here that are either undocumented or has been able to, or was here with a working visa and now whatever happened, that purchase homes, right? So if you own a home, I'm not an attorney, but I've talked to some attorneys, and you can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but it's really good to have some kind of estate and someone, like you said, like that power of attorney over your estate. So if something happens, your kids or your family don't have to leave their home. You know what I mean? Because you've left that in the right hands. I think it's really important to kind of categorize that. You just went right into one of my questions anyway, with what you were talking about with knowing your rights and everything, which was about the driver's license, which that's one of the concerns a lot of people were saying is like, oh, I don't want to go get my driver's license because da 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 da. No, you should have your driver's license. You have a driver's license and the correct information on your driver's license, you should be fine. Don't wait, especially like right now, for you to travel anywhere. You need the real ID. So make sure when you're going there, make sure you're grabbing that. And we've passed this law, I think it was last year, right? Last year or somewhere
Yeah,
like
it
that.
went into effect last year.
Yeah, that went into effect. That's really making it a better place for us here, the people that come and live here, to get that access for that. Now, I just want to. We are almost out of time, but I got a few more minutes, and I wanted to ask this question really quick. And you've been kind of like talking about the resource and the support systems and things like that, but there's one thing that I wanted to touch on briefly, because we know that marijuana has been made, proved, to be something that is legal in the state of Minnesota. But we also want to kind of educate our people. And one of the questions I have for you is, oftentimes people don't realize that because marijuana is being legal at the state level does not mean non-citizens should engage in cannabis. What should people know about the new law and how to protect them from negative consequences that could affect their immigration status or employment? So this is something that I really would like to just touch on just very briefly. We kind of already touched on some of the other things that we had thought about talking today, which was kind of great. But just briefly, just 2 minutes. I mean, I think it's really important for people to know. I know there's businesses out there that sell product for you to consume or whatever. But if you're going through an immigration status, just what do they need to be thinking about?
I'm so happy that you asked this because everyone is afraid of talking about weed. And I worked in immigration law for a few years already, and in California. And California has legalized cannabis for a long time. And you wouldn't believe how many people get caught in the crosshairs of federal law and immigration law and state cannabis law. And and this sometimes it was like you were a farmer at a cannabis field, and you're not smoking it or selling it, right? Like, but
Yeah.
you are working in the field, and that could be a negative impact. So I have this rehearsed answer that I think highlights all of these issues. And but I'm glad that you asked, because I feel like this information is often overlooked. While recreational cannabis is legal under Minnesota law, it remains federally illegal as a Schedule 3 controlled substance. This federal classification creates serious risks for non-citizens. Non-citizens should understand that any cannabis use, possession, or association, even if legal under state law, can trigger immigration consequences, including denial of citizenship, green card applications, visa renewals, or even deportation. Federal immigration authorities can consider even admitting a past use as grounds for finding a lack of good moral character. I strongly advise non-citizens to avoid any involvement with marijuana, including employment in the cannabis industry, until they've become U.S. citizens. This also extends to social media. Avoid posting content showing cannabis use or possession. And when in doubt, ask an immigration attorney about whether you should even try it. But main point, if you're not a U.S. citizen,
don't be
no
doing
weed
it.
for you.
That's
No weed
right.
for you.
No
And so,
weed, no cannabis.
I have met plenty of non-citizens who use recreational marijuana, and I have been shocked at how many people are like, well, I'm a permanent resident. And I'm like, that means you're a non-citizen. And
Exactly.
so literally is everyone who is
That
not
is
a
a
US citizen
non-citizen.
should
Should
not
not.
engage in cannabis, marijuana at all whatsoever.
Or be anywhere near it, buy it, whatever the case may be.
Nothing. Do not even.
Don't chew none of that chocolate.
No, no.
Because they make it in all these different forms that I've seen it. Like when I visit California, I see all these different
Yeah.
things, and I'm like, don't take it. Don't, if you're not
Yeah, and there
legal.
is like all these drinks too, right? And so
Exactly.
none of it is good for you. It's not worth it. I mean, a really good example just came up in last month. Someone was coming back from a family trip who's a permanent resident, and I think it was like Boston or the East Coast, and he arrives obviously to the airport, goes to a secondary inspection because he's not a US citizen. He's a permanent resident, and they held him in detention 4 days because he had a charge that was dismissed based on marijuana possession. This is years and years ago, like many, many years, like over a decade, and the case was dismissed, and immigration still used it as a way to detain him. And so
Exactly.
it's just not worth it. Don't do it.
It's just like alcohol. What I've been saying to a lot of people is like, don't drink and drive. The same thing with marijuana. Just try not to do anything dumb out there, right? Because it's going to affect your status. And that's really important. Just abide the laws, like you mentioned. Just have everything right. I put the 4 things that you said there. Know your rights, carry, constitute right. We're almost out of time, but I want you to tell us something that you live by, like a quote that you want people to like know, or something that has resonated with you, like some kind of quote or something that since you've been through all this and now you are, you got your green card and you got this, but what has been something that stood out to you that we can leave with everybody? Because people, if you're looking for that attorney, there's Juventino. He's amazing. He's worked with some of the senators and things like that. I said, he's an attorney. Okay. He's an attorney. You got to go through the right channels. But tell us a little bit, what's that little small word statement that you got?
Yeah. So I saw this with all the protests recently. There was this sign that I saw that really inspired me. Again, I am a really involved person, engaged in the community, but this one caught my eye and made me think again about how I talk about what's going on around immigration. And essentially, it was a picture of the man, what is it, Abrego Garcia, that was sent to the Salvadorian prison um, against, court orders. Um, and the sign said, I am here not because it could happen to me, but because it happened to him. And I thought that message really resonated with me. And I hope other people think that way too. We don't need bad things to happen to anyone else for us to get involved and resist in any way possible. We should be doing the work because it's happening, period. We don't need any excuses. We don't need more bad examples. We don't need more laws violated against human beings. Today is the right day to get involved.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Juventino, for being here with us today. We are so excited. If you have not been paying attention to our YouTube guest speaker series, then make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you can continue to hear and grow and learn about all the wonderful speakers that we have. We have been doing some powerful conversations like with the ones that we did today. If you want to catch up on those latest episodes for our guest speaker series, make sure you do that as well. We have business, purpose, inspiration, everything. Like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thank you so much and have a wonderful until the next time.